In the VanCaf workshop files that I provided for you, I have a couple of folders, and folder number 2 has the workshop assets to produce animation. So that's the second folder in here. And the first one that I have up there is the finished file that I created, and it's just as a comparison so you can see it, and you can see that it's working fine. This is an animated GIF. The second file is the actual JPEG working file, which is flat, there's no movement, and this is the one you're going to be working on. And finally, we have this page that I use as page 1 in my comic, where I animate the heart, I make the panels move from up to down, slide to left, and you saw that in my Creating Digital Comics video for the VanCaf event. So this is just a page where you would cut it up to create that. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is the final animation piece that I did. It's just an animated GIF. I'll show you how I animate and how I move these things around. It's actually quite easy, just simply getting to know a few tools. So that's the finished one, but I have included for you the next one right here, the actual working file. So let's open that so we can start working on it, and I can show you how I do it. And here we are. Notice that down here is just one layer. That's the background layer. What we're going to do is we're going to keep this one as is, this first layer, and we're going to duplicate the layer so then we can play around with it a bit. So let's just grab the background over here and drag it down right to this little plus here. So we could just go like this and drag it, and now we've made a copy. I'm gonna call this animation 1. That way I know that that's the one I'm working on. So we just have 2 identical layers, and what I'm going to do is use basic tools. So I'm going to go up here to the tools panel, and I'm going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. And what I'm thinking of doing is moving this hand right here. And before I begin doing that, I just want to point out that anytime I look at an art page that I want to animate, I start looking for just simple things I can move, because animation is just a simple illusion. I don't want to really go crazy. It's not like I'm drawing an actual animated movie. I'm just making a simple GIF, and I just want little things to not be so annoying, to be subtle, and then just move a bit. So for example, this hand, I'm thinking about maybe just having it move back and forth, maybe the ticket wave a bit. In a more advanced way, I could make this light up, become white, and become black. So it kind of like a neon light, but I won't go, it's beyond the scope here. But what I will do is I'll just make maybe his hat move a bit, his hand move a bit. I can make these clouds move here down at the bottom panel. I can make the clouds move so then it appears that it's just moving a bit. And maybe I can make this photo flap a bit, you know, like because he's moving it, and maybe a thumb or a finger or something like that. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to use the lasso tool to move simple objects, and then I'm going to go a little more advanced and use the liquefy tool to distort things. So let's get started then. We're going to start out with the lasso tool here, and we're going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool, which makes straight lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just zoom in here a bit and have you see what I do. So where I'm going to keep the the suit and the sleeve the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start and using my Polygonal Lasso tool, I'm going to try to stick as close as I can to the art, because since I'm going to move it, I'm basically going to have to cut some part of the background or remove some of it. You'll see what I mean in a second. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going really quickly, as quickly as I can. And I'm just moving this here and there, there. And then I connect it. If I can't see where they connect, I can hit the Command or Control key. Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, and then I will join the two. And you can sort of see that there is a selection here now. There's like a little marching ants. You can't see it because of the artwork. Just to really get a better look at it, if you go down here, down beneath where the color swatches is, there's this little icon here that to me always reminds me of a flag. You click on that and then you can see it's called a quick selection tool, and then what it does is it shows you in red everything that is outside of your selection. So what I've done is I've created a selection inside, and now I know that this is what's going to move. So this is just a quick little view just to see if you've done everything right. You can hit the letter Q and that will remove this again, or you can hit the Q again or click on that icon. So one or the other is just a quick way to check. As you can see, we have this selected. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to transform it. All right, so what I will do is I will go to Edit, because I'm editing this image. So I'm going to go to Edit, and then I'm going to go to Free Transform. All right, so what I'm doing is you can see now it has some handles, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to move this slightly, and you can see where I'm moving it. And what you can also see is the layer below. Remember down here, what I'm seeing is this other layer. All right, so as I'm moving this, you can see the other layer. You can see how much we moved it, not too much. And then I'm going to slightly move it back, so then it's sort of in the same, the wrist is in the same position. So you can see how much I moved it. Now I'm going to hit Enter. That way I could get rid of that. And now it's still selected, so then I can go up here to select and deselect. Okay, I can deselect. And now it's deselected. Watch when I turn off my layer down here, the bottom layer, you can see as I zoom in that now I have no background on the top layer. So I need to fill that back in. You see that? I need to fill that back in, and that will help me. So I have to create this right here, and I have to fill this in. That way it's believable, the movement. So how do we do that? We are going to use simple tools here. We're going to go over here to the toolbar, and we're going to use this tool called the Clone Stamp tool. And the Clone Stamp tool is basically a brush. You can see sort of up here, this area right here, I need to fill that in. I need to fill this in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of the skin from the hand. And for example, I will hit the Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC. And first what I do is I click the Alt key or the Option key, and then I click down with my brush. And what I'm doing is I'm saying this is the tone I want sampled. You can almost see now that it's copied and it's carrying it. And now I'm just going to sort of carefully copy that. So you can see that's what I'm doing. And I keep going back and forth until I sort of have what I want. So I'll click Alt or Option again and copy that. Alt or Option, and then that's how you just keep going. You grab, you'll see that your cursor becomes like a little square, and I'm making my brush size smaller, and the way I do that is on the keyboard next to the letter P, there's the bracket key. So the bracket to the left makes it smaller, the bracket to the right makes it larger. So you'll see what I'm doing here. You can see how I'm making it bigger by hitting the right bracket bigger and left bracket smaller for the brush. So I'm trying to make it small so I can get this area right here. And you can see that what I'm doing is wherever I want to sample from, I hover over my cursor, then I hit my Alt or Option key and click. So I'm saying copy that sample that. And now I just go in, I make my brush smaller, and then I will just drag. Now keep in mind that as you drag, it copies, it's sort of like the cursor, right? So it will start copying this color too. So I have to make sure I'm careful of how I'm doing it. I'm going to grab the black right here and go Option, and then just bring that down just like that. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm just basically redrawing this, and there you go. So that looks pretty good. It's just to be believable. Same thing on this side now. I'll hit the Control or Command or Option key, and I'm just going to kind of fill in the blanks here. So all I'm doing, and sometimes in order to see better, what I do is on my layers panel down here, I will create a solid color. So you can see down here, there's this sort of like circle with a half white, half black. I can create a solid color fill. And what that does is it gives me just a layer where I can pick a color, any color, and I'm going to pick yellow, just like this garish yellow, just so it stands out. And I will go OK, and I will drag this layer underneath my animation layer. That way I can see a lot easier where I'm missing. See, so you can see where I was working. I still didn't get it all right. So let's just go back to our animation layer and let's continue sampling a bit. So now that you know how I do it, where I just sample colors, and in this case I'm just sampling the pixels, and I will grab some of this black, so I'll hit the Option or Alt key, and I'll just make it easier and just go like that. And I'll just do this. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just filling in the pixels so then there's no transparent background. I would do the same thing here, and I'm not going to do it all, or I'll fast forward and do this. But you can see what I'm doing. I'm just Alt key or Option key and using again the clone stamp tool. So I'm cloning pixels is really what I'm doing, and I'm just doing it very simple, just so then I can cover the background, right? I'll turn off the color fill back here so you can see again that it's transparent, and then this just helps me sometimes just look for it. So I'm going to fill all this up first, all right, and then I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I've completed this, and if I turn off the layer right here, the color fill one, see, you can see now that you don't see any garish yellow, so that means I successfully cloned everything. And I'm going to turn back my background layer over here, and I will just turn off the animation on and off so you can see sort of what's happening. You see that? It's just a simple illusion. And when I make it full page, you really can't tell where I might have messed up a bit on the cloning. It's just really simple. And that's what it's going to look like. So that's just the first part. And I did that just simply by using the lasso tool up here, the Polygonal Lasso tool, right? I went around the whole image as close and tight as I can, and then I selected it. I then went Edit, Transform, That way I can move it. I hit return and then created this layer back here underneath to help me look for the areas where there's transparency, cleaned it up, and I'm ready to go. So now that you know how to move this the simple way, there's another way that you can move objects, a little trickier, a little more delicate, but it's still kind of fun. And what I want to do here is I want to move his hat, I want to move his hand, I want to move these clouds, and I want to move this picture, right? So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to use the liquify tool. So I will go here to filter, because it is a filter, and I will click on liquify. As soon as I click on liquify, Photoshop opens a whole new window for me. And what I'm going to do is go down here to sort of enlarge the image so I can see just a bit more. And I'm going to move this. And like I said, I want to move the hat. And the tools that are really important, that the simple tools that I want to use are basically this one up here. You see this, the first icon at the top with a little finger there? That's called the forward warp tool. And again, remember how to make your brushes bigger or smaller. It's the right bracket to make the brush bigger, the left bracket to make the brush smaller. So depending how you do it, what you're doing is this little finger just pushes. It's sort of like you're pushing pixels like they're wet. So you'll see what I'm going to do. I'm going to exaggerate, and I'm going to move this hand. You see that? I'm just moving it like that. Now, I really don't want to do that. So I'm just going to undo that, Command Z or Control Z. And what I want to do instead is make my brush smaller and maybe just move his thumb just a bit. With the liquify tool, it's important to just make small little movements. You see, I'm just moving his hand, and I'm basically just moving these pixels. I'm going to move his hat a bit, maybe his whole head, so I'm going to make my brush just a bit bigger. And remember, it's moving all the pixels, so it's all the ones next to it too. So you're trying not to... like, I don't want to move that board back there. I just want to move his hat. So I'm going to make my brush smaller and just move the hat just slightly a bit. You see that? And maybe just move this over here. Move that hat. Right? It's just subtle movements. The clouds over here, I want to make them move like they're going backwards. So I'm just going to slightly move them. You see that? I'm not doing big movements. With the liquify tool, it's just important to do small movements. And this is the tool that Photoshop people use to make heavy people skinnier or skinny people heavier. So you can see all I'm doing is just pushing the pixels. That's really it. With this one here with the hand, the final panel, I just maybe want to move the corner a bit, maybe slightly, you see that? Maybe move his thumb a bit, and this thumb here a bit, maybe this finger, right? And it's just subtle movements. It's all I'm doing here. And you just have to think of the logic of how something would move. So now I'm going to go OK. And now I will turn off. Remember, I did this on the animation layer. I will turn this on and off. And you can see now when I click it, there's movement. Okay, there's movement. And what I'm going to do now is, as an extra, I'm thinking maybe I will make a third layer and slightly, with the liquify tool, move this a little bit, the cloud just a little bit more from the previous one. So what I'm going to do is now go to my layers. I don't need this color fill anymore, so I can delete that. And this animation 1, I will make a duplicate of that. So I will drag it down to that little plus sign, and here's my copy. I will rename it, and I'll just call it animation 2. And then remember, everything's already moved already. So what I want to do is just move this head a bit and the clouds a bit for this one. That's all I'm going to do. And maybe a little bit more movement here. So remember, this one, animation 2, is a copy of animation 1. So animation 1 was already slightly moved. I'm moving things just a little bit more. So I go back to filter and to the liquify tool. And maybe on this one, I will zoom in here by going, hitting my plus key or my minus key, right? Control plus, control minus to zoom in. That's all I'm doing. And I'm using the space bar to move things as a hand. And right here with the liquify tool, the same tool, I will probably just move this slightly, this ticket, and you can see what I'm doing. It's just slight movements, right? And maybe his thumb there, and just move things around. So this one, I'm not cutting it up. I'm just moving things. I will go to the hat. Remember, this one's already been moved a bit already, but I'm just going to move it just slightly. And remember, this, make your brush small so you don't affect too much of the things around it, because you only just want to move the pixels. So I'm just moving the hat. Maybe I'll move his head a bit. So I'm just going to, just this head part, just move it a bit. You see that? And then the hand, maybe I'll move that back, move that a bit, and move that a bit. So you can see what I'm doing. It's altering. And then these clouds, I still want to keep moving them backwards. So I'll make my brush smaller because I don't want to affect the wing. And you can see now I'm just really stretching it. And this will just give the appearance that the plane is moving. So let's just make the brush smaller here so I don't tweak this, the wing, right? And then just move that. And let's go a little faster here. All right, so you can see what I'm doing, just moving pixels around. And this is kind of, to me, this is kind of the fun things of Photoshop that, you know, most people use Photoshop for graphic design or for, you know, photo retouching. But here I'm just using it just to have fun like that. So there you go. Let's just move this color back here a bit, some pixels. And again, you don't want to go too crazy. And the wing I don't want to mess with. So I think that should do it. Let's just try one more thing here. Let's just move this thumb a bit like that. And maybe this bit, and maybe I'm going to move the chair just slightly here. So I'm making the brush just a bit bigger. And right, so you can see it's just having fun. It's just playing around, thinking what would move. You know, you just want to be subtle about it. That's all you're doing. We'll hit the OK button, and that's the third one. Now we can see that when we turn this one on and off, we're moving some things. And, you know, we can't see underneath until I turn that off, and then that is moving that, and I turn that off, and we're back to the original layer. Okay, so that's how I move my objects in Photoshop. Next up, we will actually do the animation. Okay, so now we're ready to do the actual animated GIF. So I'm just going to move this up a bit just so you can see what happens next. When I go to the menu bar up here, I go to window. That's pretty much where everything is. And I want to go to timeline. See that timeline right here? I click on that, and then I get this window right here. And you have two options right here. So you can see right now, there's not much happening, but there's create frame animation and create video timeline. So if you were working with actual video, like maybe you took a video of your family, or you're actually doing an animated a real animated cartoon and you wanted to do the edits, you can use the video timeline. Or you're inserting a movie and you want to cut out maybe the bloopers or something. You're videotaping yourself and you just want to edit it. You could do it this way. But we're using create frame animation, and this is actually a button right here. So once you click on this, you'll see what happens. We are going to click on this, and before we do, I'm just going to make sure that I have my first layer selected. All right, and then everything turned off. So we're just back to the original one. Then I will create my frame animation. And what you can see that happened is that there is a little copy of this layer right here. So we're just seeing this. It's almost like layers here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it so I can see my image on the whole page. And also another thing you want to notice is the seconds. It says 0 seconds. There's a little collapsible arrow right there, and what I'm going to start out is giving it at 0.2 seconds. All right, I start that. So what we've done is we hit the timeline, and then we did create frame animation, and because we have the background selected, our first layer, it makes a little copy right there of that. And then we set the time to 0.2 seconds, and what we're going to do is click on here, and we're going to click this little plus button. That plus button will make an exact duplicate of this image here, the same one that's open. And the reason why is because animation, there's 24 frames in a second. So by having 3, you extend the scene a bit longer. So for example, this image that first image that we want, we don't want it to just quickly disappear. We want it to actually have, be able to see it for a good while. So I'm just doing three of them. So that means it's like basically 0.2, 0.4, 0.6 of a second, right? Gives us enough time. I could even do 4 if I wanted to. I like to stick with 3. And then I'm going to click one more time. So now I have 4. And that 4th one, I will then turn on over here. I will turn this layer on. Okay. And now you can see that this has moved a bit, but it's just a static image. But now this 4th little timeline icon is now this new one. So I repeat the same process. I duplicate that 2 more times, right? 2 more times. And then maybe even a 4th one. So let's just click one more time. And now this one will go just a little slightly longer maybe. And then we click one more time. So then we have 5 copies of this. But that 5th copy, now we open the second animation up here. So now you see we have that 3rd one open now. We have this, and all we have to do is go 1, 2, 3, and then that's it. And then we can maybe go back to this first one here and do that. All right, so this one, I'll go like that. And then this one, I'll make sure it's this one. Okay, so I'm just checking what I'm doing here. And yeah, so now that I have all these, I can hit the play button and let's just see what happens. You can see that it's moving. It moved a bit. What I want to also show you is the forever. This right here is how many times you want this to move. And I want it to do forever. So I think I'm good, but I just want to double check my animation. So what I do is now I export it. So I will go to File up here, Export. I will go Save for Web. And then I can make sure that by saving for web, what it does is, this is the original image size right here of 4.69 megs. We're saving for web, and now you can see the file size is reduced. But we want, instead, we want a GIF. So let's just go GIF 64, no dither. And what I'm checking is, does the color change that much? See, notice that the size here is 1.35 megs compared to 4.69. So I'm going to try to see if I can go maybe 32 and not change the color that much. There's less colors now, only 32 colors, and that looks okay. I might even try 32 and then dropping the colors down to 16 here. See what it does. Maybe even try 8 colors. Let's just see how that looks. It doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look that bad, but I think I might just go back to 16 colors. At least there's and maybe I'll just do 32 colors since it's not that much. Okay, now it looks okay. Let's just go save. I will save this to my desktop for now. So I'm just going to go to the desktop, and it's a GIF, and I just want to test it. And the way you test it is you drop it into a browser. So I'm just going to go here to my browser, and I will test it. And you can see that there's the movement, right? And we've actually done our animated GIF. So I think that's kind of cool. I think that looks all right. And then this animated GIF, it's a comic page. So that's what we would put in our book when we're doing a fixed layout book. Or you could put this on your website and then just have animated pages just to post. So that's kind of a cool thing. So hopefully you like this tutorial. As a recap, I'm just gonna go here and show you exactly what I did again, just as a quick recap. We started with one layer over here. That was the untouched layer. We then made a second layer, remember? And that one is the one we first moved. And then we duplicated that by dragging it here and made this second layer. And then we move that a bit more too. All subtle movements, both using the first one, we used the Polygonal Lasso tool to just sort of go around an object and then moving it a bit. Then the next thing we did for everything else, we just used the liquify tool, which I went to filter, and then I went liquify. And that's how I moved things, like I nudged them basically. That's all you're doing. Once I had all my 3 layers all done here, I then turned everything off, started at the beginning, and then clicked window. I went to timeline and then clicked the button that said frame animation. I then started with just one little image of that first background. I set my time to 0.2 seconds. And the reason why I did that right away is because that way every copy I made would have the same settings. If I didn't do that and it was still at 0, then I'd have to go back to all of these one by one and change the time. So it's best to do it from the beginning. I then made sure that my timing is set at forever, so it does a loop instead of just 3 times or once. Then duplicated that same thing by clicking on this little plus sign over here. So I duplicated background 1 3 times. Then I made a 4th one by clicking this again. And then that 4th one, I then turned on this animation layer. That way I was copying now this layer, and I did that 4 times. And then on the 5th time, I then open this layer up here and then do the same thing and then go back to this one again. And then I just press play just to check it. And then I go, once I like it, I can then go to File, Export, Save for Web, and then I make sure that my preset is for animated GIF. And then I just determine how many colors I wanted, because that determines the file size as well, from 4 megs to 1 meg. And this looks similar, so I like that. And then I just save. I can even test it here. Once I have a GIF within the window here, I can test my animation by clicking here before I even put it on a browser. I can check it and I can see things are moving and they look fine. If I wanted to, I hit the stop, and I can change my mind about maybe doing the animation to only go once, but I like forever in this case. And then I can also change the size here. So right now it's at 1068 pixels wide. That's what I want. But if I wanted a smaller size, I could do half that, right? And then it's a smaller size. So I can adjust this right here. I can say, oh, I needed 50% of that size. I can click on here, and I'm good to go. But anyway, once I go save, I just save to my desktop, and there is my animated GIF right there. I can double check, and I just drop it into any browser, and there it is. And there's my cool animated GIF that I can insert into my digital comic layout, and or my quick and dirty EPUB, which is I show you in another video. And I've also made written tutorials for you that you can then go step by step and hopefully be successful at this. So this might seem somewhat advanced, but at the same time, it's really fun and easy once you actually get the hang of it. Okay, guys, thanks a lot.